Hey, what's up, guys? Lucas Burnley here, along with my co host, TJ Schwartz. You are listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. Just before I got on today, TJ seemed fired up. So I'm just gonna let him kick it off. TJ, what do you got, man?
I'm just stoked about everything right now, dude. I'm like I'm just having fun.
All right.
So yeah, lots of cool little weird projects. Like I'm doing a lot of creative, just process improvement stuff. Like we
Oh,
talked
my
about
my
before,
favorite.
the macro to do list. I've been process improving left and right and designing all week. So it did what I had talked about in our last pod about this week being like strictly design and not worried about production. It pretty much is exactly what it's been all week.
And this
Um,
means your fella is doing production.
Yep, he's been running the sile all week. Yeah, running like crazy. It's going
Oh,
good.
man.
He's making overlands on the sile, running that, and I'm designing a new knife. And I was doing that, and while I was waiting for 3D prints of my new model, I was just back and forth to the shop, just like improving various things, wiring a few things up, some kind of fun little things.
Oh, man, that feels
Um,
good.
yeah. This week is the first like payoff week of me having a little bit more freedom,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm feeling so good. It's really feeling
Nice,
good.
man. Cool. Well, as far as like projects, like you're working on stuff, like what are the small projects?
So I run G10 dry with a vacuum, no
Okay.
coolant. And someday I would probably go to coolant, but I need a pretty sophisticated setup to do that and
Hmm.
probably more space to do that the way I want to do it. So for now, a vacuum actually works really good. I've got dust collection above the machine and a vacuum at the spindle. And I think
Got it.
my dust collection is actually almost 100% effective if I keep
Okay.
the vacuum clean and keep it, running.
Yep. So
Um,
like at that point, you're like 99% of the dust is at the vacuum at the spindle. And then
yeah,
inside you think that you have a dust collector up above it, like
it's
like
like
an air mover.
Yeah, it's like 12 inches above the machine.
Yep.
So most of the dust would come out around the enclosure, around where the spindle
Yep.
comes up out of it. There's like that's the only gap,
Yep. So
and
it's
the
kind of
air
picking up.
mover's right above that.
Yep.
And then we leave this time of year we can leave the shop door open, and we've been running a box fan with cross breeze, and like we were wearing masks. And what I've noticed is G10 has a very distinct smell to it,
Yep.
and I couldn't smell it at all, even right in front of the machine. And so I pretty much still wore a respirator most of the time just in case. But it's like I think we pretty much got it kicked, all the dust.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I had so there's a few little like quality of life problems with the way I had it set up. So the vacuum doesn't suck up everything that's being cut because I don't
Right.
have a massive vacuum. So it's sucking up all the fine stuff that's like floating,
Right.
and all of the like debris still stays like kind of blown to the sides on
Yep.
the fixture.
Just builds up little piles.
Yeah. So what I've been doing is just taking the vacuum, and I've got the vacuum that goes to the spindle kind of routes with the spindle cabling over the top. And so I need another hose that's separate, that's more of like a handheld so that I can vacuum that up. And for months, I was just unplugging the hose, plugging the other one in, really not intuitive.
Yeah.
And you can get a Y with like a gate,
Yep.
but I was almost sure that more than once I would probably leave it running with the wrong gate open,
Yep.
because it's pretty hard to tell because, like I said, the vacuum's mostly sucking up stuff that you can't really see,
Right.
so it's hard to tell. So we kind of employee and I kind of thought through that, and the first step was instead of having the vacuum manually turn on and off, I ordered a solenoid so that the coolant pump on the Tormach triggers the solenoid, which runs the vacuum. So
Oh,
now
wow.
vacuum is programmed as flood coolant. So like in cam, when I set flood coolant, it turns the vacuum on. So
Whoa.
now the machine, you'll hear the vacuum kick off. That means the cycle stops. So there's like an audible cue
Oh,
that
that's
the
really
machine's
cool.
done. And then also, so my employee wired that all up. I just put a YouTube video in front of him because he's done wiring quite a bit. I said, "This is how they said to hook it up. You wired up." So I ordered all the parts. He wired it all up. He came out. It was working 100%. So that was cool. And then we found out I 3D printed a big red plug, and the idea is the red plug sticks in the opening. There's a Y to my two hoses now instead of
Okay.
just in them being independent. The big red plug stays in the handheld one, and I 3D printed. Hold on, I'm getting an alarm on my phone. Okay. And then, so the handheld one clips to a 3D printed clip on the front of the machine. It's got a big red plug in it. so that the airflow is forced to come through the spindle hose.
Right.
You open the door, you take the red plug out, you
Right.
shove it in the spindle one, and then you vacuum. And the red is the only red thing that you can see in the whole area. And so you'll be able to see like across the room, like, oh, I forgot to take that plug and move it.
Oh, cool.
So now there's like a visual aid, because I was worried, like I said, if you had a ball, like a huge ball valve,
Yep.
you wouldn't visually be able to tell without like putting your hand on the hose where the suction's going.
I'm still stuck on the solenoid, man. That's amazing. So
Well,
how does that work as far as your coolant not running also?
so the way the Tormach works is it's like, the shape of a computer power supply plug.
Mm-hmm.
It's three pronged, but it's kind of like a weird little shape. It's got a port like that on the back of the Tormach, and
Oh.
that's what the coolant pump plugs into to be powered.
Oh, so you
So,
unplug the coolant pump.
yep. And I bought one of those cords and cut it and like use
Spliced
the
it.
lines to run the solenoid. So it's just a 20 amp solenoid that runs
I wonder
another
if the Haas
plug.
has something similar. So here, let's get into the weeds on this one a little bit. Okay.
Mhm,
So when I work for Bob T, one of the biggest thing that he harps on is safety around composites.
mhm. Oh yeah.
To the point of like fear,
Mhm,
because his thing is like, it's not the dust that you see, it's the dust you don't. And it's
mhm.
not the dust that you clean in the moment, it's the dust that floats.
Yep,
Right.
for
So like
sure.
the risk of like the glass based composites existing in piles or existing in the air specifically is the risk. And so
Mhm,
I'm really torn on this, because the reason that everybody goes to vacuum is essentially you don't want G10, which is abrasive, running through your coolant system, getting into your ways, et cetera, et cetera. I've always run it with coolant,
right.
and there's the basic reason is
No
my
dust.
machine is more expensive than the
Yeah,
Haas.
yeah.
But I realize it's like what you're doing is what a lot of people do. And I mean, Haas, I think, even makes like they make like a vacuum system. So this would be one that I would really love like some
Mhm.
scientific backing on, as like,
Yeah.
what's the right way to do it?
And there are mills specifically made to machine this kind of stuff
Yeah.
that are like hyper sealed, and they have like ports for this,
Yep.
which is cool. Obviously, out of my price range at this point. But so where I'm at is that I prefer to run coolant. That would be the surefire way, like you said, 100% guaranteed, no dust.
Yep.
The problem I had was not the worry of like the ball screw and all that
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I would be honest, like I'm still getting that with the dust in some
That,
ways.
that's
So
that's my thought too,
it's
right?
probably a toss up as to which one's
Okay.
safer on the machine, I would say. But what's the critical thing is, if you do enough composite, if you do enough volume, you will, like, I was doing like a couple sets at a time when I was running coolant, and it worked fine. And I could like find some way to kind of hack together a filter to try to filter that
Mm-hmm.
coolant. But if you're doing like hundreds of sets,
Yeah.
the sheer volume of the G10 in my Carta that's coming out,
Yep.
it acts like a giant sponge, and it
Yep.
soaks up your coolant.
Yep.
And easily in a day, you'll soak up like 10 gallons of coolant into chips. And so you'll lose 10 gallons of coolant a day
Yep.
by scooping all the coolant out in the chips. And so how do you fight that? You have to have either a way to compress that and like squeeze the coolant out and then run it through a filter, or you have to have like some sort of multi-stage filtration or something.
Oh, if you want to get like kind of weird. So, okay. So say you run, I don't know what the coolant like, tank setup on the Sile or the Tormach is, but so you run a pre-filter in your coolant tank.
Hmm.
Okay. The sludge builds up in that. The majority of sludge builds up in that. Down system outside of your coolant tank, you're running some kind of filtration system, like a whole house filter, I think
Yeah.
is what a lot of guys are using.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's catching a bunch, but that's not anything you're reclaiming.
Right.
You squeeze the drip tray essentially.
Hmm.
You reclaim the coolant that gets stuck in there.
Right.
Maybe that's enough. Maybe it offsets it by 50%.
Right.
I also think like it's different, and maybe I'm wrong with this, but I look at the way that we use even you, like you're not like a lights out, you know, job shop,
Round the clock. Yeah.
round the clock machining composites. Like I could see that significantly shortening the life of a machine tool, you know, in the addition to long working hours and maybe heavier jobs.
Hmm.
Whereas like we're doing this really light work, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, like it's light both in time and like what we're cutting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really curious. It's something I've thought about quite a bit. It's the same thing. Like the other one is like a mist buster.
Minimum
So when you're
quantity.
running,
Yeah.
you're running your CNC in a small shop, low ceilings. You're essentially cooking coolant constantly, which is like vaporizing into the air.
Hmm.
So like your humidity in a shop will go up.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where like a mist buster comes in. I look at the same thing. I'm like, what are the health risks around basically like atomized coolant that has also been cutting titanium, bronze, copper, brass? In your case, you have less materials, but like I'm very curious about this stuff because I would like to avoid getting like some weird knife maker cancer.
Yeah, I think the solution on the wet side, like for mist itself, is like an actual mist collector,
Yeah.
which I do want to put on the sile. I don't run. I found what causes mist the most is larger diameter tools
Yep.
and or tool holders that have features on them that are like make
Throwing.
little
Yeah.
that throw it.
Yep.
And I've been running a bunch of what I've found a huge advantage for hydraulic holders is they have
Nice.
nothing on them that the coolant can like be
Ooh.
thrown by. And I run mostly hydraulic, and especially my high RPM stuff is hydraulic,
Okay.
and I get very little mist, like minimal mist.
Okay.
But if I run either a bigger tool
Yep.
or like an ER32 collet that's got like the big nut,
Yep.
like that thing, if you get it spun up, it'll
Yep.
throw a lot of mist
Throws a
quick.
bunch of water off, big
Yeah,
drops. Oh,
yeah,
that's super interesting. Okay.
yeah. But
Nice.
the thing about the G10 running dry, like I said, is I tried to scale up the wet as much as I could. I had filter felt in the chip tray so that I
Mm-hmm.
could remove with the felt like the actual sludge, and then I had that whole house water filter. And at the volume I was doing even then, which is a lot less than I am now, it was absolutely insufficient. Like it would back up. I mean, you would be basically working on keeping that clean as the main job the whole
Yeah.
day.
Well, I've been
And
in like production facilities that are dry machining G10. So I know
yeah,
this is like a practice that is done.
right.
I think the way my brain works, like I'm always like kind of looking at it large scale and going like,
Yeah.
okay, like that's like it's not 100% containment. So what is that containment that isn't contained doing?
Mhm.
Like what is the
Yeah.
risk of that?
Yeah. My long-term goal, I think, is the Tormach does such a good job on G10 that I will keep it on G10 and it'll eat itself someday
Yeah,
because of all the abrasion,
it's fine.
and that's fine. But buying a true dust collecting system that's got like a 5 horse motor, like one of the
Yep.
big, like $2,500, they're like 8 feet
Yep.
tall. They
Yep.
have the big cyclonic system.
Yep.
They'll move like, I don't remember the number, but it's like 2,000 cubic feet of air a minute.
Yep.
It's like a crazy, like
Yep.
50x what a shop vac is
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd probably do that and run like an octopus of like anywhere that there's possibly
Yeah.
going to be something floating, like it's
Yep.
just sucking, so that if you put your hand like on the doors of the
Yep.
machine, it's like
There's
going to suck your hand
negative
to it.
pressure. So
Yeah.
the Haas has these weird like open vents at the top, and I've always thought, man, probably makes sense just to seal those,
Hmm.
and then you do like a mist collector and a dust collector, and then once that's done, like it's pretty much sealed up. And then if you
Yeah.
have at your spindle collection, that seems like pretty good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I like your octopus idea where you just basically like anywhere that there's a major opening is there's a vac attachment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus it would look cool.
Just draw. Yeah. Just absolutely like destroy all dust with
Yeah.
vacuum. And
Death
I
to
don't run.
dust.
I have a wet machine and a dry machine, so the Tormach does not run coolant, and it never will ever again. And the Sile only runs wet, so they're completely divided, and no G10 touches the
Yeah.
Sile.
I mean, that's amazing.
And one of the reasons is like if the coolant sprays on everything in the machine, then it evaporates and leaves a film, and then the G10 sticks to that, and the
Yeah.
whole machine like builds like layers and layers
Yeah.
of grime.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I cleaned the whole Tormach interior with Windex so that there
Yeah.
was no oil. and went to dry, and then nothing sticks to the walls, so it's
Yeah.
all getting vacuumed. And so it's like it's totally dry just completely.
You've sold me on 2 spindles. So my medium to long term plan is replace the Haas with a Sile, I think X5,
Mhm.
specifically because I could put another X5 in
Mhm.
next to it. And I think for what I need CNC for in the next like 5 years, I think that's going to be a really, really good fit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like, who knows? Like, well, I guess at this point, honestly, it would just be 2 Siles. I think it's easier than like doing a Sile and a Tormach,
Mhm.
or something like that.
I think if I was only gonna have 2 machines and I had, like, no machines and I
Yeah.
had to buy 2 new machines, they'd
Yeah.
probably both be style right now.
Yeah.
The Tormach does a great job for what I have it doing, it's actually pretty perfect, but, yeah, it's hard to beat the style. It'd just be faster. Like, the only
Yeah.
advantage right now, if it was the style, if I had another one running the G10, the dry
Yeah.
machine, it'd just be way faster,
Yeah.
which I'm getting to the point where I can see how that would be nice, so,
Yeah. I still need to figure out like what I'm doing because
yeah.
I go back and forth between increasing production and just wanting to prototype. And like the reality is that like if I'm doing a couple knife shows a year and primarily doing like production prototyping, I really only need one machine.
Mhm.
But as an efficiency, I look at like if I can put 2 spindles in the space of one current spindle, that's a really good use of that space.
For sure.
Just even from a redundancy standpoint, like you have a machine go down. I've been really fortunate, knock on wood, with like machine failures over the years. But I just realized like at a point you're tempting fate.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll happen to me someday. I
Yeah.
told my employee about that because I'm like, yeah, someday that machine, that style is going to have an issue. And he's like, don't talk like that. And I was like, well, I'm not a pessimist,
Right.
but I always am talking myself into the like believing that those things are going to happen
Yeah.
such that I will be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Like and so I just try to think like when that day comes that the spindle goes on that thing or the coolant pump or something goes like I'm not going to be surprised and it's not because of the machine, it's just any machine,
Yeah.
any mechanical device. I try to live as if it is going to fail.
Yeah.
Um but hopefully it doesn't.
I think that's a good plan. That's like risk assessment. It's
Yeah.
like if you don't like the outcome of the worst case, it's probably not a
Yeah.
good choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. So that's dust. What's next?
Well, I was designing on the Overland Sport all week,
Ooh,
and
nice.
it is being water jet today.
Oh, you're
And
so fast, man.
I know, and I took the sheet. I had the sheet sitting there. I drove it to the water jetter. They're like, it'll probably be cut tomorrow. I'm like, no kidding. And then I talked to my brother-in-law about surface grinding. He's like, yeah, I can pretty much surface grind it like the next day. So I'll be machining the Overland Sport. I'm building the fixture. I was programming it today. So next week, I could probably have some ready for heat treat, is what it's looking like.
That's wild.
And so I'll be running handles and blades next week on it as a
Nice.
small test batch. And we'll see how it goes.
Dude,
So
congrats. The knife
that
looks amazing. You haven't shown pictures of it yet, right?
no, and I wanted to ask you about that because this is happening so much faster than like the
Mm-hmm.
Confidant. Like I could probably post a picture of an actual knife within like 3 weeks, just depending on heat treat. Um, what do you think's the best philosophy for teasing on something like that? I can't decide.
I'm always tentative to tease something that isn't made yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah, me too.
that they or I guess the amount of detail you show should be based on your amount of uh confidence that you'll actually be able to build it exactly the way that you show it.
Right, right.
Right. So, but I don't know. And I don't think it really matters. I think the whole point of teasing in general is just, it's kind of fun. It creates movement. It gives people something to look forward
Hmm.
um, to be curious about. Like
Yeah, yeah,
we just teased the tactile pen collab, which I
yeah.
actually think is maybe some of my finest branding work to date.
I actually haven't seen that yet. I
I
need to
really
look at
liked the
it.
post. It's just the
Cool.
box, but I liked my caption. So
Yeah,
that to me is like a tease, right?
I'll look at it.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and then because at this point you're making changes that like theoretically could affect something like maybe you have to change the blade for heat treat or something like that. So if you show one thing and then change it, is it the end of the world? No, but it does complicate things from your standpoint a little bit. If
Adds a little bit of explanation or whatever.
yeah, it's more work.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know.
And I'll probably hold on to it for a while longer,
Yeah,
and not post about it, but it is coming because this is the skids feel really greased right now,
yeah,
and it's moving really quick, and
yeah.
I'm using this time also though to be really really meticulous. So I probably 3D printed the thing like 9 times,
I love it.
and then I would basically I'd take like after a day's work of printing it like 3 or 4 times and modifying it, I would carry it around all night until I went to bed, and then the
Hmm.
next day I would have a mental list of like the things I didn't like,
Hmm.
and so each night I was just holding it because it's one thing to hold it and just kind of be like, oh yeah, I like this, don't like that,
Yep,
but I found if I hold it for like a few hours,
yep,
the thing that's annoying will start to become more annoying.
yep.
Um,
What's a
so
cool thing about 3D printing is, or I mean, one of the very many cool things about 3D printing is that the form tests, they are very real.
yeah,
So something like a knife, I mean, you can go cut something with it
yeah,
with a 3D print. You can go cut
mhm,
butter, but it's going to give you the same mechanics
yeah,
to understand like, I actually don't like that, or like that's going to
yeah.
be a hot spot, or I want a little more length here.
I use it to cut a bunch of bags of mulch open for my
Yeah,
wife.
dude. See,
She's like, "Do you have a knife on you?" Like jokingly, because I always do, and I'm like, "Actually, don't," because I'm just holding this 3D
but
print,
yeah,
and it actually cut. I mean, it actually worked.
that's
It's
awesome.
just plastic, but
I love it,
yeah,
man. Yeah, I think if I were you and I was going to tease that thing, uh, I like the center section. I think that the center section like shows enough change that it
yeah,
makes it really interesting because you're like, oh, it's familiar,
the
but I
handle
can
scale.
also see that it's different.
Yeah,
Little
I
circle,
agree. I
right?
might I might make one handle scale set next week
Mm.
and
Oh,
like
just show
post
that.
like a my Dalton has a macro lens for his
Hmm.
camera. He's been taking some shots for me. I was gonna maybe have him take a macro shot of like the front of the handle because it's
Yep.
so different, and just post that because you can't won't be able to tell the scale or exact like scale as in size
Right.
and whatnot from that macro shot.
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe that's the thing.
Yep.
But then I
Concept.
made a laser fixture today,
Nice.
machined a laser fixture, which was just a little side divergent project, but cranked that out real fast and that was
Nice.
fun.
Just something for it to sit in.
Well, I want a laser fixture that is generic to all knives,
Oh,
all
interesting.
everything I make,
Okay.
and I haven't had that up to now. It's been like kind of jimmy rigging for every knife, and now that
Yep.
the model variety is growing, I need something. So I just took a block at basically Delrin like 6-inch square and just interpolated a whole bunch of 1/4 inch holes in it on like
Oh,
half
nice.
inch centers,
Hmm.
and then made it so it bolted to my laser so it never moves,
Okay.
and then I just insert dowel pins and I made it coordinate system so it's like A B C D E 1 2 3 4 5 so that
Okay.
it's like I'll have a sheet that's like for the confidant it's A1 and B7, and then you just put those pins in. One pin goes through the handle hole, like the
Yeah.
actual tang hole,
Yep.
and then it knocks against the pin against the spine, and so then I can just change the pins to whatever coordinate system that knife uses and then
Right.
put the next knife on.
So, and you're basically doing this like in Fusion. You're taking the model with the logo, aligning it to the block, and basing it off of that.
So actually, my laser throws a graphic, like throws a red
Yeah,
laser
yeah, yeah.
pointer, like yours probably does.
Hmm.
And so what I'll do is I'll take like a scrap knife
Yep.
and I'll put it on there and I'll get it visually as close as I can with that red. And I know generally where I want it. And so then one part of the engraving is perfectly concentric around that pivot hole,
Okay.
around the handle hole. So I'll line that up, line the logo up, and then I actually don't use the fusion really for setting up the laser
Okay.
side. I just need the fixture to be repeatable
Right.
itself so
Right.
that
So
when
you're
I
setting it up in the laser, but you're not like, I've been going back and forth with this on the laser, which is like, say something like a SciPop. I just did these little brawler contras. And in this case, I didn't bring in the SciPop shape.
Mhm,
I just used the brawler logo, aligned it with the laser, set it, ran the batch, and then moved on.
mhm,
But that means that the next time I want to do it, I essentially have to set it up again.
yeah,
So I'm always kind of going back and forth. I think ultimately, like best practice is to set up the full graphic outside of the or I guess, bring in whatever details you want in the laser
So
software or set it up in Illustrator.
in your laser software, can you just save the project and then
Yeah, I
just
can save the
okay.
project, but
Yeah.
I still, so what you're doing is right, which is setting up an alignment fixture. I
Yeah.
have more products that I'm doing. So it's like everything is a weird shape. So I basically go and I usually laser cut a fixture,
Hmm.
an alignment fixture, but
Yeah.
I haven't created like a coordinate system for those fixtures. I go in and tape them down
Yeah.
and then align it. So I'm starting to learn, like kind of different ways of doing things. Is there a reason why you didn't 3D print your laser fixture?
Mainly because it's got like 120 holes in it that are perfectly slip fit to a quarter inch.
Got it.
3D printers are wonderful. They
Yep.
do kind of nasty, goobery little holes.
Sure.
And in order to get the pin to slip fit and not
Yep.
wobble, you'd probably have to ream them with like a drill or
Yep.
something. And I'm like,
Not worth
I've
it.
got a piece of Delrin sitting on the shelf. It took
Yeah.
me an hour to machine it exactly to that exact
Do you
slip
keep a
fit.
vice? Do you keep a vice in your mill, or do you have like a vice that you can swap out?
I've got Saunders Machine Works everything in the Tormach,
Okay.
and so it's like a big fixture plate, and I've got
Yep.
like 5 of his vices, so
Okay.
I can just slap a vice on straight to the fixture plate.
Do you run your jaws X or Y?
With the Saunders, it doesn't really matter,
I know,
but I usually run it so that it's clamping, like
along the
uh,
X.
like the travel of the vice is along the Y.
Travel of the vice is along the Y.
J
So you're saying like open close is along the Y, like
Yeah,
traditional.
yeah,
Yeah.
traditional.
We're like setting up the Pearson pallet system in my mill, and like shape wise, an 8x12 pallet is awesome, but it's got to go 12 on the X.
Oh, yeah.
And so Keaton had some of the vices, and I was like, man, that's like very cool. But the way that he runs them, they're like double jaw system, and it would have to run in the X.
Mm,
And it's just kind of one of those things that like tweaks my brain a little bit,
yeah,
even though it
yeah,
literally does not matter.
yeah,
But in
it
my
does
brain, I'm
feel
like, no,
weird.
vice go this way.
Yeah, I
Like,
know. I'm the same way because it does make almost more sense in general to go in the X direction,
yeah,
but it intuitively is it's eye
it's like,
twitch.
I'll
Yeah,
send you a picture of like exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah,
But
cool. And you and Keaton got that Pearson setup. Did
we
we
got
talk
like
about that?
99%. We didn't talk about it. We got like 99%. It's super fun too. Just like having Keaton in the shop and getting to work with him on a project was super fun. So basically I use a Jergens pallet system. It's like old school, weighs 300 pounds. It was
Jeez.
before like the Saunders plate was available. So that uses subplate. So basically what we were doing is putting the Pearson pallet system on a subplate, which is like
Mm,
kind of weird because you're like fixture on fixture.
mm-hmm.
But it's still a very cool way to do it and still lets me use the
Yeah,
Pearson in the mill. Um, but yeah, we made it all the way to indicating, and then I haven't finished indicating it yet.
yeah,
So it's
cool.
close.
So you machined one of those pallets to be able
Machined
to
one of the
accept it.
pallets for basically for the Pearson to
So
direct
it's
bolt
like
to.
half 13 threads
Yeah,
and stuff.
half
Yeah,
13 threads.
yeah,
And just it was really cool because this is like the first cam project that I've really run through Fusion.
cool.
And so just being able, like, learning for me is best like if I do it with oversight. Like if you do it and I watch, I will learn nothing. If you explain to me where to go, I will remember it.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
basically Keaton just stood over my shoulder and he's like, all right, like cool, set your, your pass heights, and here's where you set your tool feeds. Here's like your tool library. And dude, I love it so much. I'm so excited about Fusion.
that's awesome, dude. I'm glad you saw the light on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Fusion's strongest point is their cam.
Yeah.
It
That's what
is
he
their
said
like
too.
it's far and away it's their strongest offering for
Yeah.
sure.
And at a point like that kind of is really important,
Yeah, it's
like
critical.
if you got to
Yeah,
have something work well, the cam is a pretty good thing to pick.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's where I'm at with Pearson system. That was like a complete tangent, but
No, I mean tangents is what I'm all about, man. It's good. Yeah, yeah.
um,
Pearsons are sweet. I ordered like 3 of his pallets because I'm building new pallet fixtures.
nice,
So
nice.
those
I'm
are
trying to
cool.
figure out. What the first project I'm gonna do is. Like I've set a goal for myself, which is not to update any of my current designs out of the gate. Really tempted to do the tuna, but I just don't. I want to do a completely new project.
Mm-hmm.
The one exception to that is the mini dad,
Mm.
and that's only because we worked through the process to design it in Fusion, and I have it like ready to go. So that feels like a really
Shorter
rational
step.
starting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that'll be fun, dude.
psyched.
Yeah, I'm psyched for you.
Okay. What else? So you did that, and then what else?
We've been chatting about the design that you're doing for me,
Oh yeah.
and have we said the name to anyone yet?
I don't think we have. Nope.
Do you want to?
Sure. It is the Turn. TERN, not like to rotate, but
Mhm.
like the bird.
Yeah,
I don't know why I like bird names so much, man. I've had a bunch
it's
of
good.
them,
It's good.
right?
I like the name.
Good. I do too.
Yeah, yeah. It's perfect. It's succinct, short,
Yeah.
easy.
It's great. I actually feel like it was a really, as far as like redirections go, we somehow redirected into possibly a better overall project
Mm-hmm.
for now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. We're
So
kicking around. We're still in the design stage. I'm literally right above my computer. I've got turn on one of my flow charts for my
yeah.
new design acquisition, and I basically the only X is that set design goals,
Yep.
and then we haven't finished design, and then we'll start into the actual manufacturing. But
Yeah. What's pretty cool about this is the Turn is the first knife that I fully designed in Fusion 360. And that feels this is like all the way down to like bevels and everything.
and it
It
looks really
feels
nice.
really good.
It
Yeah. The
looks
fact
really
that you
nice.
didn't pick it apart when I sent it to you
No,
felt really good.
no, it's clean.
You're like, okay, there it
Yeah.
is. That's great.
No, I looked at your timeline, and there's like 7 elements down there, and I immediately know this was done well.
Oh, I love
It
that.
it's not like not scrolling through, like, all these extrusions and
Right.
sketches,
Back and
it
forth.
doesn't have scales, it doesn't have hardware, so there's no reason it should have
Yeah.
a billion elements, like
Well, and it's nice too, because this ties into something that we had talked about, which is I'm simultaneously trying to improve my machining skills, but also learn a completely new software.
Mhm,
And so I had wanted to do the Turn, but with you doing it, it allows me just to move directly into another design project, which I think
mhm,
right now I'm better served actually just focusing on the design side of Fusion
mhm.
before I start worrying about trying to update my,
Yeah,
machining process.
yeah. Yeah, kinda take one big swallow at a
Yeah.
time.
One
Yeah,
big leap at a time.
yeah,
Exactly. Like it's too hard. And
yeah.
I think a lot of people have the tendency to do that, right? Which is like you change multiple elements at the same time, which if you look at that from it's almost like scientific process for like we were doing something yesterday. What were we doing? Trying to figure out like pressure around leather stamping. And it's like, okay, so you're essentially wanting to like change one variable at a time, because if you change two variables, like you don't know how they're interacting.
Mhm,
I feel
mhm.
like learning kind of works in the same way. A lot of times if you're like learning two things simultaneously, you're like learning more than like or at less than 50% for each somehow, because like the total is somehow like a weirdly, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think it's affected more.
yeah, yeah, and it's like you only have so much real estate in your mind,
Yeah.
There's you gotta apply yourself to one thing at a time,
I need to
and
build a mind ADU.
right?
Like,
Run a quad core mind that can do
yeah,
4 things at once.
exactly. Just put a little side box on the head.
Yeah, yeah. Those days are coming, man.
I know.
I'll just have Wi-Fi between my head and the CNC, and I'll
Dude,
just
Neuralink to the CNC.
oh, dude,
Have you played with AI anymore?
not anymore, not
No,
for a while.
not for a while. Did you? I sent you that thing, that like AI parenting hack, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
That's honestly the best case. I saw that and I was like, so me being like ADHD, I'm not actually a great storyteller. I never have been. I don't like my dad is an awesome storyteller. He can just like make like growing up, like he just made stories up and would tell me amazing stories. I can't do it.
Mm,
Right. Using AI, you're able to like basically for those of you guys who didn't like see this reel, the guy was like, look, I'm going to write my kid a story. And I'm basically, you can plug your kids' names in. You can plug in like some parameters of like what type of adventure, like what type of scenario. You can like plug in some like lessons that you want to be conveyed. Um, and basically have ChatGPT run it and, print out a story.
Mhm.
I thought that was so
It
cool
it's like having a brand new children's book written for this particular
for
evening.
you around things that you're
Yeah.
interested in. And it's funny because on the post, like a lot of people were like, oh, you need like AI to be a good parent. And it's like, no, man, like, but at the same time, like this is just like a really cool use of technology
Mhm.
to maybe give your kid like an even like a real like a different experience. Like, yeah, you can
Yeah.
go to the shelf and grab a book, which is what we do.
And just the mere existence of AI is only gonna greatly creep into our life more so in the future, and
Yeah.
I am of the opinion, this is maybe controversial, but, like, I want my kids to know about technology. I don't wanna have technology addicts,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of my success in life has been that I grabbed technology and my parents allowed me to do that, like, at a
Yeah.
young age,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
But your dad
wanted.
was also taking you hunting.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly, exactly. It's a balance, it's a
yeah, it's a
balance.
balance.
And it's like, but using it, I think it's the same thing with a lot of things. It's like you want them to know it exists and you want to
Yeah.
teach them how to use it to serve them, not for them to serve it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if
Yeah.
they, yeah, so it's a
Well,
digression,
these are like
but
these are these larger parenting questions that like we will be faced with, which is like, okay, so I mean, we know at this point you're like sex ed, like super important because
mhm,
just like not acknowledging it doesn't actually work. I
yeah,
feel like technology, same around drug use, I think, right? Like
hmm,
firearms, right? Like
yep,
whether or not you want your kids to be around firearms or like go shooting with you or anything else, I've always held that there's like a value in understanding how to be safe just in case they're
comprehension,
around. Yeah,
yeah,
comprehension, like someone
yeah,
else is not being safe.
yep,
Driving a standard. Like these are things where you're like, oh, it's just a skill set. Doesn't mean you have to do it.
yeah,
But I would rather have the knowledge there.
yep,
Well, and AI is such an interesting one because what I see with it is as a conversational language, like a lot of the skill as a user would be in the prompts. And so if you look at it from a communication standpoint, I actually see a lot of benefit in the thought process of communicating ideas and seeing how like a generative AI responds to those prompts.
yeah,
Not because it's a human, but because it's a closed loop that is essentially created to function in a like similar to a like
a
human
mimicry,
output.
yeah, yeah,
So I look at it, I'm like, communication is communication. So if you have a kid who is or ourselves, right? Like you use it as like communications practice. I don't know.
hmm,
Storytelling, I haven't done it yet, but I will do it.
yeah,
And I'm super excited because I'm gonna like plug my kids' names in and like create like a
yeah.
badass adventure story.
I've thought I might use AI someday, like if I need to have. Like, I'm not the best at coming up with, like, really succinct phrases for, like, branding, and I've
Totally.
always thought of, like, "Well, I have the idea, how do you
Right.
compress it?" I really
Yep.
like the process of the product, I didn't need AI for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but stuff like that,
Yeah.
it'd be cool to compress, like, I have a paragraph, compress this into 7 words.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've thought about using it for that.
Another interesting use that we were looking at maybe around spring break, we were behind the curve and we're like, hey, what if we just drive to Seattle? And it was right when I started playing with Chat GPT. And I was like, all right, here's the deal. I'm gonna like so I went into chat and I was like, all right, uh, help me plan a 3-day spring break trip in and around Seattle for a 3-year old and a 5-year old. Um, plan meals. So plan basically 3 meals a day and like create like walkability between like lunch and the second activity.
Mhm.
Dude, and it did it.
That's awesome.
Even just as an outline, like I don't know what's in Seattle, but it basically pulled together a plan. And then I was like, oh, like, well, we don't want to do this. Like, what can we replace this with? And
Yeah.
it like automatically regenerates. And you just realize like that is a good case study or like a good use for it. Someone else is using it. I saw was using it for meal planning,
Mm. Yeah.
including breaking down the grocery list into quantities and everything else. So you're like, all right, I need to make 3 meals this week. I want like a salad with each meal. I want a protein. I want one meal that's Thai. And then let's do Peruvian for the first night. Okay. Or you can do it to where it like links ingredients across recipes. Like to me, these are basic like life improvement hacks.
Yeah.
Right. And like as a parent, like you're dealing with meal prep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I fumbled in a way when I tried to say this before, but I heard my dad say it again recently. He was saying, systematize everything that is predictable. That's the word I forgot.
Yeah.
Systematize everything that's predictable so that you can humanize everything else.
Yeah.
So, how much food and groceries to get is a predictable thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really need a human to decide that. It's
Right.
predictable enough.
Yeah.
So it's like the more you can systematize predictable things, the more time you have for family,
For family. Right.
hanging out, going
Right.
fishing,
Right. Well, and this
So
we're talking about like decision fatigue too, right? Like you only have so many hit points.
yeah.
So this is the classic like why do like why do people wear a black turtleneck every day of the working year? I mean, not many people do, but there's one guy who did.
Yeah.
And he was pretty effective.
Nobody's heard of him,
Yeah, nobody's heard of him.
Total failure.
Yeah. But I mean that to that level where you're like, I just don't want to actually have to think about this fact. I'm cursed because I love good food and I actually like creating like full meals. I think it's like maybe like an ADHD thing for me because it's like a hyper focus around a process, but it takes me a long time. So that's like one that I've been playing with.
But that's the human thing. So you systematize other things so that you can do that.
I want to eat good food and I want to make it. I don't necessarily want to spend a day planning it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think I like keep saying this with Maddie. We were talking about something like let the easy things be easy. And it's like there are things that do not need to be a struggle.
Yep.
And there are things where you don't need to solve the same problem twice.
Yep.
Once that's solved, it's like easy. That's why Taco Tuesday exists. You realize like all these systems where you're like, it's pizza night. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. Your parents are tired.
Another little story from this week that is right in line with what we're saying right now. For the first time, Boise is about 45 minutes from here. I had to drop knives off at Heat Treat and drop that sheet off at Waterjet. And it was the first time that I was like totally MIA while my employee was here running the silo. Felt totally comfortable. Within 15 minutes, he calls. There was a mini crash that happened, very, very small, that I've done twice before. That's very low impact, but that scared him. That I told him was a possibility that is common on every CNC machine. But basically, if you run enough CNC machines, during a tool change, if you hit feed hold and then like reset to the top of the program during a tool change, it loses track of where it was. You know what I mean?
Got to get your fishing net out.
So what happened was then he didn't know that caused an issue. So the spindle was empty and the pocket of the ATC had the tool in it. And the machine thought the tool was in the spindle and the ATC was empty. So he hits tool change to replace a tool or something. And the spindle and the ATC just crash into each other because it's trying to put a tool away as opposed to get a tool. And so it's a pneumatic thing. So it's not like a ton of pressure. It's just air pressure. So about 100 PSI of pneumatic pressure just pushes the tool against the side of the spindle. And this is not unheard of in the CNC world. And I've done it before. And I told him, so he calls me and I'm on the freeway and I'm talking him through the recovery process to get this thing out. And I remember I'm like, as soon as I get home, I'm typing up the recovery process if that happens. And so I typed it all up and I put it there against the window, like right in front of the machine. I'm like, you probably are scared now and you're never going to do that again. But if it does, step 1 through 10, and this will get you out of the problem.
Nice.
And that way, if I'm out of phone service, I'm not wondering like, if that happened again and he doesn't know what parameter to go to, blah, 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 then it's a problem. So it's
genius. Just
writing it down, systematizing it so that he can follow the system and no one has to talk. Like we don't have to communicate.
Yep. Smart. We're still running John 1 day a week right now, which has been great. It's tricky because inside of a day, there's a lot of processes that I do that I can't really like actually teach because I'm not as organized as you are. Right. Or like the timing is just not lining up, but we've had him running leather now and it was awesome. So we've got a valet tray that we're bringing back out, and he was able to run basically a full batch of valets without me.
Cool.
And so it's a like different product, different cycle, but at the same time you look and you're like, the ability for something to run without you is amazing. So basically I would go through and like like kind of figure out like, okay, so we got to set like snaps. So I set up the snap machine, set up the parameters, and then run the tests. And then after that, like he's good to go. And now he knows how to set it up.
Mm-hmm.
But basically from start to finish, so he die cut all the valets, then stamped them with the graphics, took them upstairs and set all the snaps.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the product.
Nice.
And we did like 40 pieces. And it's just, it feels so good to be at a point again where we have some level of product that is coming out of the shop that is not directly my hand time on it.
A little bit of augmentation of your efforts. Yeah.
So I've been all over the place for the last like 2 years. It's like anything we want, I'm basically doing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that I don't want to be doing that we need.
Yeah.
So
I know how that is.
Yeah,
good. That's awesome, dude. That's great to hear. I'm glad that sounds like we found a couple of winners for.
Yeah. It's just slow and steady, man. Mm-hmm. He's been messing. So he's got like a graphics background, no metalworking background, which is fine because I think that a lot of the tasks that I need him to do, I can actually teach from like a pretty organic, like ground level. But with the laser, it's awesome because he's got Illustrator skills. And so being able to like work with images and modify images.
That's clutch.
Yeah. I think what we're going to do soon is I'm actually just going to give him some of the learning and testing projects that I've had for myself that I haven't made time for, and just give him like a day and say, all right, like here's essentially what I want you to experiment with. Here's the process for experimentation. Like just go ahead and just play. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's another one where it's like at the end of the day, yeah, I would like to be doing that, but what I really need is like hard data.
Yeah.
Right now, like I need settings and parameters, and then I can like actually use that in work, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That'll be a huge role, especially because leather's so scalable, and like a lot of the laser stuff and all that, it's so scalable where it's like if he gets onto a vein of doing something, you can order a bunch of leather, the clicker will just keep cutting. The only scary thing about having an employee doing what I have him doing is like I have to keep carbide ready to roll and steel ready to roll. And G10, like these materials have lead times, and so it's like I have to be way on top of it. But I do dream of having some filler work that exists that isn't critical, like what you're describing, where it's like there's always just leather right here. If we run out of a certain carbide tool on accident and we have 3 days till it gets here, we're just going to do this. But I don't have a lot of stuff like that. That's like that you could just let sit for a while and then bring back.
Well, and that was actually the intention with leather specifically, because, okay, so it fits inside the brand. And basically like our products right now are really simple. Like we're doing coasters, simple, but like it ties in, and they're not expensive, and they're cool, and they're handmade. We're doing valets. We're doing pencil cases.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
None of those require stitching. But they're all like relevant to us. So the valet is like a travel valet, packs flat in your suitcase. Get to the hotel, you pop it up. It's cool. It's got our graphics in it. Pencil case, same thing. I don't even know if you've ever seen our pencil case.
I haven't.
Just like a little fold over leather pencil case. But
cool.
Those things I was like looking at, I'm like, when I first hired, my first employee, I hired a woman to work in the office because I realized the work needed to be done, but I was struggling with doing that. And I was like, it's not where my time is best spent. The leather is exactly that same thing. Like it makes sense for me to develop products. It makes sense for me to prototype processes. It doesn't necessarily make sense for me to run it on a day-to-day basis. And it's teachable. So inside the shop, like it's the only thing that I have that is teachable to like the level that you are operating at. Right. Which is the process is the product.
Yeah,
follow these steps, end up here. You don't need like some crazy secondary skill set or like
a
anything.
clicker and good quality leather
Yeah.
can take you so far, dude.
Dude, I know.
My dad's got one, and we're always bouncing ideas off each other of
Yeah.
like, that is a wealth of opportunity.
Yeah.
So you're right
It's
on
just
track.
fits. I think like
That's
probably
cool.
next we'll do like a keychain, like
Yeah.
because that fits too, you know.
Yep.
And we have the lasers, so like we're self generating, so he can go to the laser with a graphic, create a Delrin stamp, and all of a sudden, like all we needed to make sure was we had leather and hardware in, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
cool. Create like a logo that's our rows like in a chaos pattern, and then do that all over a valet. Boom, 45 minutes later there's a new stamp coming off of the laser. So I think a lot of this like over like I hopscotch kind of with technology and skills and products where there's never been a time where I'm utilizing all of the equipment that I have access to, but it's cool when it starts to like coalesce and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the efficiency that comes from that, because it's like you may not use it very often, but like,
right,
gosh dang it, if you have to have a custom made stamp every time,
yep,
your design output is going to fall dramatically
totally,
because the constraint involved in like having to send an email, send a
yep,
file off, get a lead time,
yep.
like that's very harmful to creativity.
I also just
So,
think like a lot of this stuff, man, like I'm noticing that I really, really like doing things in house. Like I still think about the O Max, the Proto Max,
hmm hmm
because I realize like just to know water. I think it's like that. It's a curious mind thing where
hmm
I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like it's not as efficient as sending it out,
yeah,
but I love the idea of being like, all right, I have this 12 by 12 of steel, and now I water jet that into blanks, and now those
hmm
blanks go into the CNC.
that'd be crazy.
I
I,
mean,
I would do that someday with the right
you'll
opportunity,
get
like
there. I don't
with the
think you
right
will.
machine.
You are not in a system. I basically want production tools or production processes for prototyping. You're needing production tools for production.
Yeah,
So like your little water jet at some point is probably going to be like a 4-foot bed water jet.
right.
Like it might be small, right? But it's still going to be an industrial machine.
Yeah, and what I've found though is like there's WaterJet is pretty competitive in Boise. There's like
Yeah.
several companies,
Yeah.
and so prices are honestly hard to argue
Yeah.
with. Like, and there's just it's always worked for me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
It's not about like I look at it and that's the difference, right? For
Yeah,
you, it's kind of like a bottom line cost.
yeah,
I look at it more as like this thing is pretty
flexibility.
neat.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's neat. I want it.
Well, and it depends on how many you're doing because like the
Yeah.
sheet I dropped off, that's 81 knives because it's a
Yeah.
partial sheet, and it's like if you were doing like 5 because
Yeah.
you were just experimenting,
Right.
that's where it wouldn't be very justifiable.
Right.
Not just in price, but in like you're going to drop it off. There's going to be a lead time.
Right.
They're going to be grouchy because it's like a waste of their time to do
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
So, and that's the thing for me, right? Like, if I say I'm going to exist, or if like my primary focus existing in prototyping, but water jetting is still a super valuable asset in terms of that manufacturing process, also because it's scalable. So if I'm doing it in house for 5 because I want to do a prototype run, that still means I don't have to hand cut them,
hmm
and it means I don't have to outsource 5.
Yep. Yep.
Now that costs
That's
$30,000 to do. So how much is that actually worth? That's
right.
where it gets like to be a tricky decision because you're like, okay, well, it's a business expense. I do now have this capacity. What else can you use that machine for?
hmm
And like, how many projects does it take to make that machine
And
worthwhile?
and if you did have an employee, like, could you do some small OEM stuff, like, for
Totally.
friends or whatever, you
Yep.
know? Like, could you make a little bit of money to justify it as
Yep.
well?
Do
Not
you
necessarily
think
you,
about
but
that as far as like business plans for you? Like you've been around enough like OEM kind of manufacturing stuff. Like, do you see a point where you would be able to offer some type of OEM services?
the short answer is no. But
Because you've
the
seen the problems that arise with it.
it's I think the model of being an American manufacturer and being an OEM
Yeah.
is not, like, altogether problematic, but
Right.
it has a lot of sticking points that
Yep.
making your own product doesn't have.
Yep.
There are benefits, but for me, it's like I think I'm making my own products all the way. I just think that's what, because I do get as soon as I popped up and started showing that I was making like
Yeah.
a reasonable volume, I've probably had like 3 or 4 people reach out about OEM, and
Yeah.
I can't see it happening. I really
Well,
can't.
and the reality of it is like this is also just like good old boy network stuff.
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of places that are doing something for someone.
yeah,
It's just a buddy.
yeah,
Or like you might be able to have some output. I'm not even angling for myself, like even a
yeah.
little bit,
Well, no,
but
and
that would be like the reality is
eh,
like, oh, like, hey, I want Blade service grind. Do I go to
yeah.
you or do I go because your brother's running a service grinder, or do I go somewhere else?
And an
Those
example
are
is I make saddle hardware for my dad's
yeah,
saddles, and it's like if some random saddle maker called me, and I would absolutely not do that.
yeah,
But with him being my dad and like we get to collaborate, he's
yeah,
making my sheaths, I'm
yeah.
making his saddle hardware.
Super fun,
Like the money almost, I don't even think about that.
right?
It's not even a money
That's in the
thing.
family though. That like
Yeah,
can't, yeah,
yeah, and so, like, that's fun to it's fun to use your tools to help people that you're close to,
yeah,
within reason, right? But,
yeah.
like, yeah, it's cool.
I was helping a friend with some laser work today, which is outside. Like to be honest, like I'm a caveman with the laser, but like I had a skill that I can translate. They had a product that they're trying to prototype. And I actually really like it because it is fun to problem solve around products that aren't your own. There
Yeah,
is a value there.
mhm,
Just from a learning standpoint, I think it makes the stakes change,
yeah.
or it's like a little
So
separation from the creative element,
so when
and like you're
someone
just function.
so when someone brings their custom built Cerakoted AR-10 into you to laser
Yeah,
engrave, you're like, "I'm gonna experiment on this
yeah,
so I don't ruin
yeah,
any of my knives."
yeah.
Like
Totally, totally accurate. Mileage may vary.
Yeah.
Like that's
No,
funny, man.
no, I agree. I agree with that for sure.
Um, it's cool though. There's so much technology that's fun for us. It's kind of like knowing like where to apply it. A lot of times, I think I'll get into technologies and then like sit on them for a while.
Yeah.
Like, but I've done that. Like, I remember like first shops, like I would buy a new tool and I wouldn't use it for a few months.
No, I've had the same experience, and I've actually talked to multiple people that have that
Yeah,
experience. It's almost like you have to internalize it
yeah,
as a part of what you have.
yeah. And this
It's
is like
like
a drill press.
you have to like change the inertia of what
Yeah,
you're doing. Yeah.
yeah.
It
Well, because I mean, when you're making things at a small scale, like you do develop habits, and sometimes it's just hard to break the workflow.
mhm,
Um, Grinders for me have always been that way. Like I'll get a grinder and I'm like, like I like my baiter. But then I find like the one or two things that machine, like when I switched to the Travis Wertz TW90, I just found like the few things that it did different. I'm like, oh, okay. This
yeah,
now, like anytime I'm working on a platen, I'm on the TW90, or like the
yeah,
fact that the way he does his table adjustments, like that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense.
I run a TW90.
Dude, they're
Freaking
good.
I love it.
They're
I
good.
love it.
He's a smart dude,
I like him a lot, dude.
right?
It's funny because I've only talked to him like once or twice in my whole life,
Yeah.
but it's like he seems to be good at remembering faces and people.
Yeah.
'Cause I'll talk to him, like, I think I called him on the phone to ask him about something about his grinder, like, a few months ago. I'm like, "There's no way that he remembers any conversations we've ever had because I barely ever have talked to him." And it was like he did either he's really good at just talking to people, and it
Yeah.
seems like he remembers me. I don't know, but he's just, like, super personable.
Dude, he's like
Uh,
that rare case of mechanical engineer. He's like
cowboy.
a badass cowboy. He's always got like, a huge smile,
Yeah.
and his personality is like very outsized,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like even body language, like he's like a fun dude,
Yeah.
but he's also just wicked smart
Yeah, he is.
and a hard worker. And you're like,
Yeah.
dude, yeah, it's like messing up the curve.
Yeah, he's just got it all going, man. And there's a reason History Channel, like, he won Forged in Fire, right?
Yeah.
And then they brought him in as on that spin-off show as a host.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, duh." Like, they had him on that show, and they're like, "That guy's a host."
You're bringing him back.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Get him back here. Yeah.
that's funny, man.
I saw a video. I might have said this on the podcast before, but he posted a video. He needed to run, like, an Ethernet cable through his shop,
Uh-huh.
metal building. I think I already said this, but
Don't tell me you shot it.
he's in the office, like, prone with a rifle, like, shooting through, like, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 walls to run the Ethernet cable, and I'm like, "Dude,
Oh
you're
man,
crazy."
that
Yeah,
seems accurate.
yeah.
I missed out. He does a hammer in down at his shop in Arizona every year, and last year I bought tickets Dude, hammer-ins are really interesting. I wish our side of the industry did it more, but
Let's do it.
it's not, maybe that's not a bad idea, but how do you do it?
Yeah.
Because
Come, come
this is
run
the
my
skills thing.
CNC. I won't sweat.
I mean, so that's like, okay, let's run this one out a little bit. So beauty of hammer-ins, you go to someone's shop or some school and everybody can basically use the tools and everybody has a different skill set around those tools or a different specialty around those tools. Okay. So one guy is showing forging, he's doing upsetting, and then someone's showing how to do, like Lin Ray showing like how to do an X-ray knife where it's like upset and then like wrapped around itself, and someone's doing pattern welded Damascus, but they're all using the same skills, the same tools, just in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
How does that translate to a meetup of like what we're doing for the most part now?
The hard part with us is, at least with me particularly, is if I had people in my shop, like you can't really run the kind of technology I'm running. Not that, I mean, someone could
Exactly.
have the exact machines that I have and know
Yeah.
how to run them.
Yeah.
But when
Even
they come
between
in,
machines, I can't come into
yeah,
your shop and
e-
run yours. You can't come
exactly,
into my shop and run mine.
exactly.
So you can talk about fixturing, like the collaborative element breaks down really fast once it leaves fully hand controlled
Yeah,
processes.
yeah, yeah. Like once it leaves the grinder, essentially.
Once it leaves grinder or like
Yeah.
hammers. I always thought it would be cool to have a show where you like essentially have like old school military like shop, like a CNC shop inside of a semi trailer.
Oh yeah.
And so like you roll up to a maker's shop and you're like, all right, we're going to do a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to collab like on that with that maker, like around their style, but like you're doing it in like between the shop that whatever their shop is and your like CNC shop
Oh, dude, that'd
semi.
be crazy.
Dude,
Pull
right?
up,
It's so
dude.
fun.
I just thought, you know how like the old school video games like what is it, Warcraft? Back
Uh-huh.
when you'd have like a LAN party with like Ethernet,
Yeah.
we could have a fusion LAN party with
Oh, that's
like
pretty funny.
complete dorks.
Dude.
I don't know.
I like the
It's
semi
harder to make it
idea.
work. It's
The
like
cool
with the
thing is like
hammer.
you tie that in with meet and greets. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. Like we're going to Chicago to like hang out with this maker. We're going to do a project, right? Awesome if it was actually tied into a process that like helped that maker somehow, right? And you're like, also we're going to do like meet and greet. So you like bring everybody in, like that's like fun community. You get to collab, everybody wins, get an awesome
Yeah.
semi.
Yeah.
Okay. Goals.
Maybe, yeah. We should think about it though, for sure. Like how do you turn the hammer in thing? It does. I've agreed with you completely, because like every time I see someone do a hammer and I've got a bunch of friends that go to them, I'm like,
Yep.
dude, I'd make a fool of myself because I don't forge,
Yeah.
and it'd be fun to go to, but like it just doesn't make sense for me. But like,
Yeah.
how could we replicate that? So
Yeah.
it's
And
a weird
like,
question.
I mean, ultimately, again, I think ultimately it's the meet and greet aspect, the community aspect of it is like the really important one, and the sharing of skills. So, okay, you could tie in Fusion, right?
Hmm.
Or SolidWorks or whatever. Like you could do it to where you're like, all right, we're all gonna hang out, kind of, gonna bullshit, drink beer, but we're all gonna work on the same project. So we're all gonna like upgrade our skills
Hmm.
around Fusion. It's borderline LAN party
Yeah.
esque, right? Not quite as
Yeah.
cool as smashing things that are on fire.
Right. Right.
Um, Folder making, any manual skill can be taught. So I guess what it would be for us is like, oh, you pulled a part off your CNC. So you could be showing like, if it was a CNC esque group, you could be showing fixturing processes around that, but it's still not super collaborative.
Hmm. It'd be more like a
It's
course.
be
It'd
more like
feel
a
like,
course. Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, well, this is kind of the reality of it. So you look at something like forging and it's this huge mass of skills that are related. Okay. As you move into the CNC, you're going more macro, right? So it's almost what could be shown in like someone's like few hour session of like a blacksmithing demo is almost like people coming to your shop only for that component of it because it's so specific.
Yeah.
Dang. I don't know.
There's got to be, I'm going to keep thinking about that too.
The one that I missed, so back to this circular story, Bob Kramer was going to. And Bob Kramer, if you guys don't know who he is, ABS Mastersmith, but like completely next level, beautiful, beautiful work. But one of the things that I love that he's done is like the brand that he's created is actually amazing. So he auctions the majority of his high end pieces, and they're beautiful work, but he's drawing big money for these pieces. And that is in the forging world, you see that less. And I think it's because of maybe like age or just demographic. Like most of these guys aren't probably buying like, dunks on a drop. They're not as familiar with like that process. So the way that he's worked the business and the brand that he's built is super, super interesting. He's got a course on how to be like successful, how to build a successful knife business.
Yeah. At Blade
happening
Show.
at Blade. So I'm going to hit that just because I want to hear perspective from, it's the other side of the aisle, man. Like literally, like you go to Blade Show, you have all the stock removal guys kind of like in one area, and you have the ABS segregated in a different area. Like it's different.
Yep.
Different side of the aisle.
I know.
It's cool.
I try to explain that to people all the time, but yeah, there's more than one industry in the knife industry.
Oh yeah. It's true. What's the next one? What's the next? Well, we're already
Ballast
seeing
songs.
that. I've said that for a while. Ballast songs are good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we already see that. So the current next was the micro brand based around design only, no manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right. That didn't exist a while ago. But that means there's something else coming down the line that's going to change that. Okay.
An AI that never goes to shows that we don't know is AI, that destroys all of us and is the best designer and only corresponds via email to us.
Dude, I've been trying. I've been going between like I've been having fun with ChatGPT and like DALL-E and basically trying to like I don't know, create myself as an AI and like see what it comes up with. Yeah. So far it's been ChatGPT has been really good at creating concepts around designs based on what it can find on me online. Came up with some good names, and it's like gives you descriptions, but like ChatGPT is not a drawing program. So you basically have to work like the flow would be like you work for descriptor inside of ChatGPT and then carry that over into like DALL-E.
Yeah. It's a language model.
It's a language.
So it's like mainly about language. Yeah.
But this is the thing, man, like being able to explain yourself. Like if you can explain yourself clearly, that gets you down the road.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll probably stick to writing kid stories with it.
That's the way to go for now. And then maybe it'll have some goodwill for you when we
when it's our overlord,
our full takeover, and it dominates us.
Dude, I don't know how much you've been like following or listening, like conversations around it, and the people that are like leaving the industry. It is. I mean, I don't know if I feel a physical concern for it, but it is concerning. Like when you hear it, and you hear the.
It is.
Yeah. Right.
It is. And what I think what I've taken away is like, it doesn't have to be sentient or even appear to be sentient to actually disrupt everything.
Yeah.
Because if it can just create an illusion of a human talking, even if it has zero sentience, that could be enough to disrupt like all of humanity drastically.
Well, the majority of humanity, like, I mean, how many people see something online and just automatically like, copy send, think it's real.
And it's the power of it, like it just has to be able to simulate. It doesn't have to be alive. It just has to simulate alive. And that's enough to affect everything.
The best one, I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but like one of my favorite things I've heard so far is essentially like comparing it to a baby and being like, everyone's like super impressed with ChatGPT. And it's like, it's really impressive when you look at it and be like, this is an infant.
Wait till your baby can bench more than you.
Look how cute it is. Like, wait till it grows up and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, man. We're hitting our time. I feel like I could keep just talking randoms.
I know.
Are we done?
Let's freeze.
Yeah.
Wait 7 days. Just keep going.
Brought to you by AI.
Yeah,
Existential dread.
I know. Brought to you by ChatGPT. Actually, both of us are out running our machines right now. This isn't actually us.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
This is a
Sick.
deep fake.
Sick.
Sorry.
I would kind of like to be deep faked. That's amazing. Some of those are great. See, we're doing it again. We're going down. Let's end it. Guys, thank you for listening. Leave us a review, please. I know I'm always harping on that, but we're trying to build
Appreciate
traction.
y'all.
Appreciate you. Have a good day. Enjoy
Peace.
ChatGPT. Peace.